News broke just after 5. Solo Ball will have to miss the entire upcoming men's college basketball season. We'll fill in some of the details. Plus, the Huskies continue to search for a backup big, and NFL draft is upcoming. Skyler Bell, Joe Fagnano, where do we think they'll go? This is a jam-packed Monday night edition of Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday night. Welcome back to another episode of Locked On UConn. I am Matt Schonvisky. On today's show, we will close NFL draft. Skyler Bell, Joe Fagnano, they will be drafted later this week. We'll project out what we think from a rounds perspective. We'll talk about covering both of them, especially Joe Fagnano when he first arrived. We saw him from the entire start of training camp all the way through that initial first season. Middle of today's show, we have one name to add to the Huskies' search for a big. There has been a change in that situation. I am not pulling anyone off from the list that I talked about earlier. However, we do have one name that we received earlier today that keep an eye out for, and we'll talk about that later in the middle of today's show. But first, obviously, news of the day. Solo Ball needs to redshirt. His wrist injury, much bigger than I think anybody expected. We became aware of the news this past weekend. And that's when we made a change regarding some of the information around Solo Ball that we were putting out here on the show. We didn't go full born. I was not comfortable talking about medical information without talking with a player. I was not going to talk about medical information without getting approval from some others as well. So we left it alone. I think that speaks to some of the coverage I've had on the football side, where when we're aware of information from an injury perspective, we usually keep it close to the vest, normal beat writer stuff there. So that's what I did. I was not in a position. I was not going to, again, put anything out there that's going to jeopardize my access to anything that I do with the University of Connecticut and the University of Connecticut Athletic Department. However, we were aware this past weekend. I have some additional details to talk through, but here are some of the comments I had on Monday morning show, and then we could talk through from there. I can't say fully expect Solo Ball to be back. I could say I expect him to be back. I still stand behind that. I'm not going to change that going forward. And I think today is going to be the last time I talk about the Solo Ball decision going forward. And it has nothing to do with what I just talked about. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I think over time you'll understand why. But that's all I'm going to say about Solo Ball and his decision and what it is as we go forward. And that's all I'm going to say. So that was on Monday morning's Locked On UConn. If you were listening, you knew something was up based on some of that. I got some questions. Well, why are you talking so weird about the Solo Ball situation? Well, that's why. In terms of, I've seen a lot of questions out there. Why 10 months? Why so long? Why does he have to miss the entire season? Well, the information I have, it's going to take 10 months to get fully back to where you need to be from not only playing condition for your wrists, but also get back your full range of motion, work on your shooting motion, and making sure that everything is fully healed before you start overworking that again. Because you know, how many shots do you take, especially at the college level where you're taking shots after shots after shot. You're trying to get shots up every single day, every single moment almost, to make sure you're continuing to hone your game and things of that nature. So I think precaution, but also it's going to take 10 months. That's the word that I have. And why it's going to take 10 months, it's because it's not just a one procedure. They're going to have to do some things more than once as we go through that. Not going to reveal anything else other than that, but that's the information that I have. That's the information that I had over the weekend as well. And again, we weren't comfortable putting it out there, but hopefully you guys picked up that there was something going on there with Solo Ball, and it wasn't normal. Hey, am I coming back to UConn or not? It was definitely something different. And when it comes to, once again, when it comes to medical issues, I'm not going to be revealing stuff on the show unless the school puts it out there. So that's how we're going to continue to operate here on Locked On UConn. So when we get to football season and maybe there's some injury news out there, well, we're going to be treating it the same way. And if we get into the mid-basketball season, we're going to be treating it the same way. So just so you know, going forward, injury information, injury news, and medical information about kids and players, different animal than a player coming back to UConn or a player entering the transfer portal. So that's how we're going to continue to treat information here on the show. And hopefully you guys can appreciate that and respect that and as we go forward. Now, what's the impact both to this immediate near term, and then what's the impact with solo ball longer term? Near term, I don't have information in terms of what UConn's looking to do to backfill or to fill in for solo ball next season. I don't have any information on that right now. We are working on it. We will continue to provide updates as we go, as we get it. I will come back and I will talk about it on the next show if I have any information, or if not, then we'll wait until the next show that we have. We will continue to get information. I know that. But at this stage, I do not have any news on how UConn will handle the solo ball situation. When it comes to solo ball, I need to talk about this again. I talked about it on Monday, on the Monday morning show, and I'm talking about it again because, listen, solo has to take 10 months to fully recover. And it's not like this is net new stuff. Maybe that the fact that it's going to take a full 10 months to recover might be new. But listen, he was playing through a significant injury the entire season, especially near the back half of the year. And he fought through. And the grit, the desire to be great, the desire to help this team, help his teammates, be there for his teammates, I think that speaks to the culture that Dan Hurley has and all the types of people that he brings into this program. They fight for this name right here, for this logo. And they have the heart, the mentality to put everything on the line to help the basketball program that everybody that's watching this loves. And he put it all in because he now has to sit there and recover for 10 months after he did everything he possibly could to be in the best position to help his team get to a national championship game. And this program fell just short. Just short. We're talking about a couple shots, couple calls. If one call goes another way and Silas Demery Jr. is still on the court, or if Terrace Reed doesn't get that offensive foul on the screen, or if solo ball actually gets called the right way and takes the charge instead of it being a block, you never know what transpires. So just the grittiness, the toughness. I said in a tweet, absolute beast that he was this season to fight through the adversity that he was facing, especially for it to be his shooting hand. Like if it's an offhand, okay, that's a different animal. But when it's the hand that you're using nonstop throughout a college basketball season, and that's the only way you're going to continue to get better from a shooting perspective is continue to put up shots. And now he's got to sit. He's got to wait. And he's got to repair. And then he's going to come back and have to retrain his wrist again because it's going to be a process. And that's why it's taking so long. So that's what we could say about solo ball. Just again, the gritness, the toughness, the heart, the mentality, the desire just to want to be there for this team, to want to be there for his teammates, to fight through all of that and put everything on the line to try to go win a national championship for this school, this university, and for you guys, the fans. I just think much appreciation, a lot of thanks, a lot of gratitude, and just tip of the cap as well, because just spectacular performance. As we go forward on this show, we will be turning the page to the backup big search that UConn is continuing to look for. We have a new name to add, so we'll do that as we continue. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. If you like to bet game lines, if you like to bet futures, if you like to bet who's going to win the Eastern Conference, Western Conference, NBA Finals, who's going to be Finals MVP, FanDuel has it all. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Back in on this Monday night edition of Locked On UConn, we've got a quick update to add to the projection that we made on this show, maybe over the weekend it was. I can't remember exactly when, but we had put out that there's two options that UConn was looking at for a backup big. And there were the only two names that I had official confirmation on. The first one was Moustapha Thiam, who believe took an official visit up to Michigan today. The other was Kepnang from Washington. Those are the two names that I have. A new name, and it's not new. It's been out there on social media. I know a lot of people have talked about it. It's been a desire of UConn fans to have this player, and even before I think Najee Hines committed. But Diop from Arizona State. There's not been a lot of noise around him with UConn. I do know that it was reported, I think John Rothstein had this on CBS, that he will be taking a visit to St. John's in the next day or two. But I've been told, don't shut the door on Diop just yet. So whatever's transpiring behind the scenes at UConn, I think Diop is still a potential option. Now, it seems like St. John's is throwing money around left and right because they just landed Donnie Freeman earlier today. And maybe I could share a little more about the Donnie Freeman situation with UConn. Money became an issue for the Freeman camp. And that's ultimately why he canceled the trip here to UConn, was because he wanted to go chase money. He didn't want to chase a national championship, which could have delivered more money for him, but he wanted to go chase money. And then clearly it was a St. John's and Kentucky battle in terms of who's going to pony up the most cash up front for Donnie Freeman. And there's the situation. So I bring that up because now Diop is going to visit St. John's. But I did get some information earlier today that, hey, don't shut the door on Diop. I don't have confirmation if after the St. John's visit, UConn will also be hosting Diop or not. I don't have confirmation right now of that. But those are the three names that I have in the running right now for the backup center. I don't have any other names. I know I've seen some other names out there, both from UConn sources and others that are speculating who UConn could potentially look at for the backup spot. I don't have any confirmation of that. So other than the rumors that are out there, I have Diop, I've got Kepnang, and I've got Moustapha Thiam. Those are the three. And those are the three names that I've been told. I don't have any other information other than that. So I think maybe something happened with Diop where maybe he was projected to go somewhere that fell through potentially. And then now there's more opportunities here on the East Coast, maybe at St. John's or UConn. But St. John's right now is the only one that I know he is visiting. I don't have confirmation that he's going to then make his way up to Stores. If I do get that, I will report that, though. So the information I had is now gone from 2 and has increased up to 3. So I'm going to say I'm backtracking a little bit on the backup centerpiece. I'm not pulling any other names out of the running, but maybe it's a little more fluid than what I had previously talked about. So just a quick update there, and we'll continue to update as we go forward when it comes to that situation. As we go forward, we're going to move from men's basketball and bring in NFL draft is coming up. It's going to be in Pittsburgh on Thursday. We'll talk about that. UConn has a couple players in the running, and we will go through that and talk about our experiences with both of them as we continue here on Locked On UConn. This is Matt Schonvisky from the Everydayer Club. You can get Locked On UConn ad-free with the Everydayer Club. Plus, members-only Discord access. Join at lockedonyucon.supercast.com. Again, lockedonyucon.supercast.com. Link is in the show notes here on YouTube and also anywhere you are currently watching. Back in on this Monday night edition of Locked On UConn. And like I said, we're switching gears to NFL drafts. And let's start with Joe Fagnano because he was after Jim Moore took over, and we all know what transpired his first year with Taquan Roberson and Nick Charlton, where he was a starter coming out of Jim Moore's first training camp. And then we go out to Utah State. So for those of you that don't know, I was at that time was still covering day-to-day, was beat writer for This Is UConn Country, and I had traveled out to Logan, Utah, which, by the way, spectacular environment. If you ever get a chance to go out there, scenery, etc. If you're into outdoors, my gosh, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it out there. But needless to say, after that initial year, and Taquan Roberson was trying to come back from injury because if you remember, he had the fake handoff, tried to go to up the sideline and beat a defender around the corner, and he could have gone and ran for probably another 50 yards, but his leg gave out and set him back significantly. So to prepare for that, and because Nick Charlton came from Maine, and I remember a lot of in-depth conversation. Nick Charlton was great to talk with, by the way. I know there was a lot of angst regarding him and his offensive approach and some of the play calling and things of that nature. But he was a great football mind, former head coach at Maine. You could, just in talking with him, he was one of the most open books I've ever had the experience of talking with when it comes to an assistant coach, because we would do a session after every game. And he would come in and we would talk through what went right, what went wrong. And the injury to Taquan Roberson really hurt him. You could tell they invested a tremendous amount of time into Taquan Roberson that initial first year. And the impact that had on Nick, I could see it. The first session we met with him afterwards, and I think it was myself and Joe Ruda from the Hartford Current. We were both in there, and he would meet with us regularly and would be able to go into a lot of details of what worked the prior game, what wasn't working, how they needed to approach things. So we got a good relationship with Nick at that time. And yeah, he was just really upset about the situation that Taquan put in all that work to get a starting job, and then it ended like that. And Nick even said at that time, you don't know if he's going to be back fully healthy ever again and what that's going to do for his career. So I think that's probably why it impacted Nick Charlton so much. So fast forward an off season, they want to bring in another quarterback, and Nick, obviously being the former head coach up at Maine, knows Joe Fagnano very well after coaching him multiple years, and they bring him in. And when I saw him the very first day training camp wise, it was, oh, this is the guy. Because normally at UConn, it's been up and down. You know how UConn struggled previously. But even in situations where you knew we had really good quarterbacks, anybody that was following me at the time, I think Stephen Krzyzewski, I was a big fan. He was a player that his ball placement in terms of being able to hit receivers in stride and putting it in the right spot and leading receivers and pinpoint accuracy. He was one of those guys during the Randy Edsall era that never, to me, really got a full opportunity compared to some of the other players that were out there. And I thought from a technique standpoint and a pinpoint accuracy standpoint, he was one of the best I've seen. But then you fast forward, Joe Fagnano, the ball never, and I'll tell you, it never hit the ground with Joe Fagnano when he was in at quarterback. And that was a complete change, really, from what we had been seeing for a very long period of time with the UConn football program, with receivers not being on the same page with their quarterback. And some of that speaks to there were freshmen coming in at times and new receivers every now and then because there's lots of turnover with the program. But Fagnano came in, and immediately it was clear to me this was a player on another level. And when they went through that training camp and there was a competition and Taquan Roberson was back, he was still wearing a knee brace at the time, but it was Roberson versus Fagnano. And I know the thinking out there was, well, Taquan Roberson is healthy. This is a player coming in from Maine and Fagnano. And, well, it's going to be Roberson's job to lose. And I know the rest of the media out there were very impressed with what Taquan Roberson had been doing during camp. But to me, it was clear, having been inside a football program, how the coaches were treating Fagnano during practice. It's like the little things that you notice, just having had experience inside a program and how the team was operating and how they were handling their quarterback. And it's very similar to, I will say, the current situation at UConn in the quarterback battle, which we'll talk a little bit about this as we go forward, because we're going to be doing some football interviews on Tuesday. We'll have a guest on the show. We'll talk through in detail a lot about football. We'll go into the details, and so stay tuned for that. But no different than what I saw and am seeing from the spring game this past, maybe it's 2 Saturdays ago, with that quarterback battle. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. But when it came to Joe Fagnano, crystal clear to me, Fagnano was going to be the guy. And when we were gathering from a media perspective, I think there were a couple of reports that were put out there that Roberson was going to be the quarterback. I know Jim Mora wasn't happy with that. And I think that was something that started some of maybe Mora's unhappiness at UConn. I'm not going to go into further details there, but that might have been the start of something. Either way, Joe Fagnano to me was clearly the guy. And fast forward, I think a week and a half maybe, or a week, and then it's game week, and Fagnano's announced QB1. I remember going on a show with Jared Kotler and talking through some of that at the time. So we were all over it. I was all over it in terms of that process. Fagnano to me brings a lot of traits that you look for in a quarterback. And it's not just, the ball doesn't hit the ground. It clearly leader. And how he got some of that, I don't know if everybody here knows the story or if it was ever told, but he's third brother. 2 previously went through Penn State, grew up in Pennsylvania. His oldest brother was a safety, starting level safety, had some interceptions for the Nittany Lions and all that. So a big time football family. So he's lived it, he's breathed it, he saw it his entire life. So he had a great football mind, and then he played quarterback. And just giving him the experiences that he's had, he was very under the radar type of player. I think he was, if I'm remembering right, he was originally a walk-on to Maine and worked his way up. And it's a tremendous story. I wish I didn't have the opportunity to, but I should have reached out and tried to get him on the show ahead of the draft, because just talking through that process would be something that I think the fans would appreciate and give him an opportunity to tell his story, because he was never guaranteed anything. He had familiarity with Penn State. I think he wanted to go to Penn State, but the opportunity never came, and he ended up walking on at Maine and then had some significant games and good games against pretty good competition. And then fast forward, Roberson goes down. Fagnano gets the opportunity here, and he takes the advantage. He takes the most. He gets the most out of what the opportunity is in front of him. But don't forget his very first season, second game in. And I remember there were a lot of fans out there questioning, why is Fagnano the guy? Nick Charlton's playing favorites. That wasn't the case. It was crystal clear at the time. But then fast forward another week, and that's when he got hurt. So if you think his debut was NC State. It was the NC State game. It was the first game where fans were actually back. They're coming off the bowl season. First game of the year at the Rent, Thursday night. NC State came in, and Rentschler Field was packed for the first time since, first time since 2013. Probably the Michigan game was the last time it was like that. And the fans brought it, but things didn't work out. And I remember the first possession. Yeah, and I know Fagnano didn't really do things with his legs that much here, but if you remember that very first drive against NC State, and it's out there, you can go back and find it and watch it. But he was a weapon with his legs, and he was delivering hits. And to me, just looking back on the situation, because I know the very next week he ended up going out and had the injury. I feel like he did something and got banged up in that first drive because things were never the same after that. He played well the rest of the game against NC State, but I don't think he was ever the same there. This is me assuming, just watching him and seeing how things transpired, because I was on field level for that game, and I remember being on the sidelines and saw I was about 10 yards from when he took a massive hit up the sideline. Because he had two back-to-back big-time runs. One, he went out and got down inside the red zone and delivered a hit on the sideline to a pretty big defender. And I think maybe that's when something got banged up initially. And then he had another run up the right sideline where he got in the end zone, but they said he stepped out. And then ultimately UConn scored on that first drive. I think it was a run up the right sideline. Happened right in front of me. But fast forward a week, and then he gets injured, and he's out for the year. So he even at that point in time faced adversity and then had to come back again. So he worked through that, came back, fought through. Jim Mora brought in Nick Evers. And again, it's, you know how quarterbacks go through situations and no matter whatever the adversity is, they could still continue to fight and fight and fight and fight. And I'm not comparing him to Tom Brady. So don't say I'm comparing him to Tom Brady. But do you remember the Tom Brady, what he had to deal with Lloyd Carr at Michigan, where he had to work and work and work and try to work his way through? Finally got named the starter, but then Lloyd had brought in Drew Henson as well, and there was that battle, and it was really never the spot or the job for Tom Brady in college. I view that similar situation with the Joe Fagnano type. And part of assessing a player is how they handle those types of situations. And he handled it spectacularly well, better than I think any of us would be able to handle the situation. Because if you rewind to Nick Evers' first year, and nothing against Nick, I think he came in very highly touted. He's got a lot of talent, but I think he was still needed a lot of experience before he was ready to deliver. But in the era of NIL, I vividly remember a press conference I was at with Jim Mora, and he made the comment, and I didn't get a chance to ask him about it before he left the stage or left the podium, but he made a comment that basically stated, well, we invested all this money in Nick. We're going to play the guy. Rather than, which is a huge change. You would think a guy would play the player that gave you the best opportunity to win. Not, we're going to develop the guy. And maybe this is Jim Mora. The Jim Mora was looking at it from a, hey, this is how we handle things in the NFL with free agency. So I'm going to handle the same thing here, because if we sign somebody, the owner expects that guy to play. And if we invest in somebody, the owner expects that guy to play, and we're going to play him and develop him. And we're going to treat him like a first-round draft pick. And I think that's how they handled Nick Evers, even though Joe Fagnano was going to give you the best opportunity to win. And why do I say that? Because we saw evidence of it that year. Because if you remember, Nick Evers played at Maryland. Huskies got blown out. Fagnano comes in and was lighting the world up against Maryland, even though it was such a significant gap in margin from a scoring perspective that game. But then fast forward to week 2, and Fagnano sets the world on fire, if you guys remember. He set all these school records that have never been broken. Set records that even Dan Orlovsky didn't accomplish. Broke Dan Orlovsky's records, passing-wise. So me, I'm sitting here, and this is when I had started to back away because we had just had our third child, and I wasn't there day to day with Jim Moore and the rest of the program until very recently. But to me, somebody that was now on the outside looking at this situation, it was very clear Joe Fagnano was the best quarterback for this program. And it took 8, 9 games for the coaching staff to finally make the decision that, oh, yeah, Joe Fagnano, this is the guy that needs to play. Because there were situations, they went to Duke. At Duke. It was a situation where if Fagnano had played, they were going to win that game. There's no doubt. But they played Nick, and they ended up with a loss. It was a close loss. UConn had an opportunity to win, and maybe that was, well, maybe Jim was looking at, hey, Nick is coming along. We're going to continue to give him opportunities, etc. And it was at UAB where UConn was down a couple scores. It was the fourth quarter, and I remember Fagnano came in, and we have a text chain going for a lot of the people that know football and all that. And I made the comment, UConn's coming back, Fagnano's in. And sure enough, Joe Fagnano leads the team back from a multi-score game with, I think, like 8 minutes left in the game. And the passes, the pinpoint accuracy he had, and the back shoulder throws, I think, to Gaithings to win the game was spectacular. And I said, hey, this is it. They're going to play Fagnano the rest of the way. And sure enough, they did. And then he goes on, starts the bowl game against North Carolina, and then ultimately starts the final season. And here we are. So the Fagnano story, it has never been handed to him. He's had to work each and every step of the way to get the success that he ultimately had. And yes, I know there's a mark on him that, hey, maybe he's an older player entering the NFL draft, but I think that experience and what he went through, I think it's going to be appreciated by those that are looking at him as a potential late round, third day draft pick, because I think that's where he's going to go. I think he's going to have an opportunity, and I think he's going to be able to show some things in camp and maybe in the preseason. You might see him come out, and he's going to be making some noise in the preseason. And then who knows what happens with his career. So I think he's going to definitely have an opportunity. He will get drafted, in my opinion. I think he's one of these players that you might see him as a backup quarterback for a very long period of time. And if he ever got the opportunity, hey, we'll see what transpires. But he's a player that had to work his way. And I think there's a lot of that going on, because let's transition over to Skyler Bell, who came in from Wisconsin and had a spectacular first season. But I don't think anybody saw the second year that he had coming, including myself. And another thing that speaks to Skyler Bell is if you remember, before his final season, he had an opportunity and was offered a bunch of money to go up to Michigan. And he ended up turning it down. I think it was $500,000. And Skyler Bell said, nope, I'm staying here. UConn's the best place for me. I have the rapport with Joe Fagnano, and we know Joe Fagnano's coming back now for another season. And he decided to stay because of that. And I think that says everything you need to see from a player, the skill set of a Skyler Bell and a wide receiver, that to be able to go in and look at what's going to be the best position for me to be successful and not go chase the money and not go up to a program like Michigan and stay here at UConn, who we all know the perception of, because he could have been the top target at Michigan. No question. But what he was able to do his final season in college at UConn in terms of almost triple crown winner with receptions, yards, touchdowns. I mean, if you said that to me 5 years ago, and that UConn was going to have one of the best quarterbacks in the country up for Heisman candidacy, and although he never went to New York, obviously, but he was in conversations there to be sent to New York, and then have a receiver, because if you remember the UConn offense over the years, it's always been run. It's never been let's throw the ball. To have a receiver that has an opportunity to win the Triple Crown, I could have never imagined that. And I'm somebody that's been in and around the football program for a very, very, very long period of time. So that decision by Bell to stay at UConn and pass up the money also speaks to, I think, what decision makers are looking for. And then you go on the field and his ability, my comparison to him has always been Stephon Diggs, because I see how he's able to make plays. He's not as tall as a lot of premier receivers in the NFL, but at the same time, he can catch the ball and take it to the house at any moment. He can make big plays over the middle. He's not afraid to go over the middle. And he's a player that's going to be consistent. From his junior year to his senior year, he also improved his hands. And he also got faster, a lot faster, noticeably faster, at least to me, because he took his game to another level. And I still think there's opportunity for Skyler Bell to continue to improve. I don't think he's a finished product yet entering the NFL. I think he's got more improvement to go. And I think when you project out that, as well as what he's been able to accomplish, as well as, hey, I'm not going to chase a bag, well, I think that speaks to why I believe Skyler Bell could go as early as the second round. And I've seen some projections where he could potentially go to the second round. Listen, there's definitely opportunities for him to be a pretty high draft pick and maybe be a day 2 pick. So that's my projection. Skyler Bell, I think, will go second day. And I think Joe Fagnano will be a late third day draft pick. But I do believe both will get drafted. I think both will have opportunities, and maybe they end up on the same team as well. That could be something to watch, maybe locally here as well. I'm going to wrap it here. We are a bit over time than we normally do. Just a reminder, Locked On UConn is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. If you like the content that you have, please come back. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and we will continue to try to give you the content that you want, some behind-the-scenes things. The next couple of days will be a little different. It's not going to be just me here in this chair. We're going to have some other interviews. We're starting Tuesday with some football coverage. So if anything breaks on the basketball side, we will obviously talk about it. If I get more information on the basketball side, we will obviously talk about it. But the plan right now is Tuesday night show is football focused entirely. We're going to have a good guest on here. I think you'll be familiar if you listen to UConn podcasts out there. So we're going to be talking a lot of UConn football on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, I've got a surprise for Wednesday. I think we're going to be giving some behind-the-scenes information and coverage of one of the newer players here that's coming to UConn. So I'll leave it at that. We'll have more of that as we move forward. For now, this is Matt Schonvisky from Locked On UConn. Again, if you like the content that you have, please hit the like and subscribe button. And just a reminder, one more time, Locked On UConn is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On UConn ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonuconn.supercast.com. Again, lockedonuconn.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On College Basketball. Again, just to recap today, we talked NFL draft with Skyler Bell, Joe Fagnano. We had a small update. I did backtrack a bit on the backup 5, so there's a slight change there. And then we also obviously talked in detail about the unfortunate news that Solo Ball will have to miss the entire upcoming college basketball season. As we go forward, as I mentioned, we're talking football on Tuesday. We're back in basketball on Wednesday. We'll have a guest on both days. Until then, Matt Schonvisky, Locked On UConn. See ya!